Thanks, Seth. Just wanted to welcome everyone. I know everybody's time is valuable at the moment, so we'll just get started straight away with our live event on how HR directors are creating a community to reduce isolation at work. First of all, before we get started, I'd like to personally thank you all for showing up today to participate in this community. I know all of you had to prioritize your lives around this new paradigm we're living in, so we really appreciate your support and the support of this community. To kick us off, let's just get started by getting to know each other. A few people are turning up at the moment. There's a chat pane there, and we'll be taking Q&A towards the end. We don't have a huge amount of time, so any questions that we don't get to answer today, we'll certainly follow up with you afterwards. So please, if you can find the chat pane, go ahead and maybe just for a bit of crack, why don't you just post in the number one meal that you've learned to prepare in the kitchen as a recipe since this whole thing has started, since all of us are spending a little bit more time at home, and we can get ourselves started off in the chat pane that way. Well, we started this group to help. We really wanted to make it a springboard to help HR directors and managers manage the impact of changes going on today. We don't have all the answers, but we figured the best way to take positive action was to create a community. And joining us today is CEO of Tandem, Teillard, who is going to talk about the way HR directors are creating community to reduce isolation, as well as sharing what we've seen in some of our customers here at Tandem. And over the next few weeks, we've lined up some incredible guest speakers as well on topics like agility and resilience. And I know that all of our talks are going to be invaluable to you when you're navigating the changes and challenges and even the opportunities as they present themselves over the coming weeks and months. And for anyone who misses these talks and gatherings, we'll share these afterwards as well. So look, just based on the theme of our hugs being HR at the heart, maybe Aisling, you could get started with us, just explaining to us a little bit about what that means to you and to Tandem at the moment.
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to spend this time together as a community, and I'm excited of the discussion that we can start today and continue over time. Yeah, when we thought about HR being at the heart, it really struck me that every time there's a shockwave in the organization, there's this leaning on HR to come and help with all the human aspects of what we do. And there's so much humanity is almost built into the center of everything we're doing right now, because every time we do anything in HR right now, we've really got to be thinking more than ever about the employee experience and how that lands. And over the past few weeks, I've had these incredible conversations with our customers, with my network, with lots of HRDs who were talking about different ways they were changing HR and how they were trying to reduce the isolation and the individual impact of COVID-19 and turn it into a community feel where people can empathize and connect with each other in new and meaningful ways. And there were so many inspiring examples that I thought, gosh, as a community, if we can share all these things that are happening right now, it could be really powerful for people to kind of trade away different best practices between each other so they can come together and learn. And I think that was kind of the real rationale for setting this up. And maybe just to give you a handful of examples of things that I've seen our HR directors take action on. There's some very immediate HR process-driven things, like, for example, a lot of people had the classic engagement survey throughout this time. It's a typical time of year to run engagement surveys. And a lot of them just kind of went, it feels all wrong right now. We can't ask the usual questions that we'd normally ask, and switching them out for COVID-19 surveys and being very specific about, how's your resilience? How are you feeling? Is there anything more the organization can do to support you and connect with you right now? And being really empathetic, I think, to the situation. And, that's something that we support in Tandem in terms of giving people the tools to drive pulse surveys. And we've just seen lots of well-being kind of pulse surveys happening instead of the classic engagement happening, which I think is really inspiring, that people are able to shift gear and just change their strategy and deliver something that's really meaningful for the moment. And we've seen lots of other initiatives, like people giving their e-learning tools to the whole family. Or there was one example that I just loved where the CEO came out and really showed a moment of vulnerability and empathy with people, and said, look, this is unprecedented times, and I need your feedback. Am I focused on the right things? Send me feedback in Tandem, and so on. And the way that people respond to that kind of empathetic leadership, I think, is a whole new direction. I think we want different things from our leaders right now. And there's so many different things that people are doing that just feels very human, very supported. Everything from bringing home offices to the people's homes, right through to changing the way they do business. Like, one of our customers literally changed from producing luxury goods to ventilators, changing their whole business models to support this time. I just think there's all these wonderful moments of humanity happening right now that are changing the face of HR.
One of the things we were talking about during the week was the fact that a lot of HR directors in particular are under pressure to manage this impact, that a lot of this is to do with the human impact in organizations. And it's usually up to the HR department to try to accommodate that in employee organizations where people have whole new ways of communicating. Interaction between employees has changed a lot. And especially with employees themselves, they're starting to feel more isolated and alone and unsettled. A lot of the usual things they'd have to connect aren't there anymore. What kind of things are we seeing from the organizations we're working with and elsewhere with regard to how HR directors are starting to manage that impact?
Yeah, I think, there's an awful lot of push toward community and creating community among employees so that they feel connected. And that's everything from morning huddles to virtual coffees together, to virtual quizzes together, to all these kind of things. But I think one of the things that is particularly meaningful for people is how they can create a meaning through the fabric of the work that people do every day. Because while you can create community right now and that feels good, that's a community that you have to manage on an ongoing basis. And I think we've to be careful that those communities are for the right purpose, because over time those communities are also the same communities that will hold through when you have to take the hard decisions, and maybe restructuring is ahead of you, maybe delayering or reduction of headcount, or all these initiatives that are much tougher to face. And that community, I think, has to be focused in a way that we don't create internal Twitter and we've a heap of haters coming together. But I think some people are doing some really clever things around community right now, and just making sure that the manager has the tools, I suppose, in their toolkit to be able to create that community. So checking in with people individually, reshaping the goals that are most relevant for now, being really clear about, okay, there's ambiguity, the business has been shook, the business has been hit, but for now we're reprioritizing that, and being really clear about what today's priority is. And for some organization, it's that restrictive. They can only predict what can happen today or tomorrow. They can't plan into, by the end of the year we're going to be doing this, because all of this is so unpredictable for us. So I think that idea that people have really warmed toward is, we've got to create community in the fabric of the work that we do, but we've also got to give managers the right toolkit so that they can help and support throughout this time without creating communities that will long term become destructive for us.
Okay, and you boiled it down there to kind of three areas around humanity, employee experience, and this toolkit we're talking about. But in terms of the humanity aspect, obviously humanity has been a big topic in HR for a long time, but it seems like this becomes very important now at a point where work has changed and environment has changed and the way people feel at work has changed. So what parts of humanity in the workplace is important at the moment?
Yeah, I think, we have this opportunity to kind of press pause here and reflect on all of our processes through the lens of the employee experience. Like, if you take the classic one, performance review, most people are planning right now for interim performance reviews. And, we can look at our traditional means of managing performance and just plow ahead, or we could maybe pause and think of, how do these things land with employees right now? Because if you could consider even the simple scenarios of going to the checkout person in a retail store, or the warehouse person, and or anybody involved in delivery, And while they're showing up to do their regular 9 to 5 job, chances are they were in that 70% bell curve that would have got a rating something akin to fully meets expectations, in the normal course of events. And we have to ask, does that feel right now? Because, they're practically heroic for just showing up for work and risking their own health and the health of their families just to come in and do a job every day for us. And kind of looking at those processes and going, what feels right for right now? But also thinking, maybe this is the burning platform where we get to reinvent these things. And I'm not suggesting people all throw out their performance practices overnight and completely change tack. But I do think there's an opportunity to do something different and to think about the reinvention of how does this look to the employee right now when they're risking everything to come in here? How does that message land with them that you fully met expectations? It's just not a great message to receive right now. But was it ever? Was it ever really that human an experience? Did we really get it right? And sometimes I kind of think that maybe we have the opportunity to create this pre-COVID world and this post-COVID world. And it's almost akin to, I used to be in telco industry for quite a long time. And we always had this defining moment in 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone. And like all telco people, we were all obsessed with our Nokias. It was good, it was sturdy, great battery life. It never dropped a call, great phone, loved it. Most telco people had a Nokia at some point. And then suddenly the iPhone came in and we didn't know we wanted it. But as soon as we got it, we had this amazing experience that we were all drawn to and really engaged with. And, everybody suddenly switched to iPhone. And then of course, Android came and battle began between, but my point being that perhaps HR could be similar. Maybe we've been driving along nicely with our Nokias, but maybe we have a chance now to consider, do we have the iPhone version of the employee experience? This frictionless, seamless experience that people engage with, that people look forward to using, as opposed to the dreaded review, And I think every process in HR you could look at right now and go, could we do it a little bit differently? Could we just change the way these things happen? Because for the first time in a long time, we have a burning platform. We have a license to change everything. We can go back to our organizations who've experienced vulnerability and humanity together and go, you know what, we've been thinking about this. This hasn't been the greatest employee experience anyway. We want to do something different and new. And I think that message will be so well received right now, because I think people are ready for a new world that looks slightly different to the world that we had.
Yeah. So, if I understand correctly, what we're talking about is I suppose reframing how we shape our initiatives around how the employee might experience that. And obviously, maybe the employee experience was a bit more forgiving in the past, but now that things are so fractured and so kind of people are isolated, that those things get magnified online. It seems like any isolation that was there before gets magnified 100 times or more because of this disconnection that naturally occurs when you're working online a lot of the time. But also we can create ways to enhance the connection and maybe to improve the employee experience. But I suppose the main point is the reduction of that friction in the experience that we're seeing. But another thing you're talking about is this toolkit. So let's talk a little bit about that. In that, obviously, this is not just a technical consideration. It's about strategy, both short term and long term. So what kind of things should people be looking out for at the moment when they're putting together their toolkit, not just for right now, but like later on when the months and weeks go by over the next while? What should they be looking out for?
Yeah. One of the things that I think we need to consider is, what is the toolkit for managers when they return from all of this, because it's almost like we can't go back now. We can't pretend we didn't see into each other's homes and that we didn't experience this dramatic set of events together, and that we've all been slightly traumatized together and we've lived through this new experience. So perhaps the things that we relied on in the past will work for us in the future. And I'm thinking of those managers in particular who relied on tactics like presenteeism or micromanagement, and they've kind of been at sea for the past few weeks, because you just can't live off. I was talking to a HR consultant the other day, and she's like, she was working with some clients and they were literally the last people to obey the government lockdown rules because they just didn't want to leave the office because they didn't know how to manage without an office. you know, and they were catapulted into this future of work world that they were so unfamiliar and so at sea with. And these sorts of people, I think, they just need a new direction. They need a new toolkit. They need a new way of managing their people, a new way of going, you know what, you don't have to manage them that way anyway. And we can see now that it doesn't work. And I suspect what's going to happen is you're going to see a whole new host of demands coming from employees, because while nobody's enjoying this lockdown, certainly eyes, excuse me, have been open to, you know, maybe I was working a crazy lifestyle. Maybe I don't want the long commute 5 days a week. I was talking to a CEO of a large scale organization. He was like, and he's very much the office guy. And he was like, I'm actually only going to do 3 days in the office from now on. I'm going to work from home forever for 2 days. You know, so I do think people are going to come back with these new demands on how they want to live their working lives in the future. And our leaders need to be ready with answers for this. You know, are we accommodating a future of work? Do we need to learn how to connect with each other in a meaningful way more remotely? You know, we can't rely on face-to-face always being the answer. You know, can we embrace technology in a new way and try and bring that into our working lives in a more meaningful way, in a way that helps the employee experience, not in a way that creates a new barrier and a new system for us to navigate, but in a way that really embraces kind of this new world thinking that actually technology has been our friend throughout all of this. And we've all learned how to do our Zoom coffees and our Zoom shopping online and all this, you know, and embrace these things. And I think that's part of the toolkit is to try and help managers find ways of coaching their people and leading their people, but with new tools and techniques that maybe we wouldn't have so quickly embraced in the past.
I suppose what you mentioned actually even today was the fact that a lot of people are only learning how to work remotely. And obviously there's a lot of resources out there around how best to do that. So we won't get into too much of that. But I suppose one of the things that we're lucky to have at Tandem is an experience of what changes can bring about in an organization. Even small new things in an organization can sometimes create changes. And we've already talked about a few of those changes and how the impact of that goes through. So, for example, we obviously specialize a lot in feedback and how that can affect an organization. And obviously, what if a manager brings in feedback and suddenly they're faced with negative feedback, as you mentioned at the beginning of this event? There's also things like GDPR considerations and other impacts around performance that we need to be conscious of as we bring in these new toolkits. So what are some of the things that we could maybe share and talk about in terms of how to manage that?
Yeah. So look, even on our own tool in the last few weeks, we've seen a real surge in usage, you know, and it's interesting because it's kind of, you would think this isn't the time to start giving all each other loads of feedback. Like everyone's got new priorities now and new ways. But actually, when we looked a bit closer at the surge in usage, we saw like real moments of appreciation happening and people just, you know, saying thanks and appreciating the work that people do. And I think that's been a source of comfort to people. And actually a few people, users, in fact, got in touch to say, I got a feedback and it just meant so much. And it just, you know, in the middle of all the stress and the madness, just for somebody to turn around and notice that you've been working so hard in HR to try and make all this happen, to get those moments are big, you know, big highlights. I think as well, we've seen a lot of usage around areas like check-ins, you know, where managers are more quick to kind of check in with people. And those check-ins, they might have a slightly different shape than they would have had. It's not the usual kind of, here's your 5 goals and it's like, how are you doing? You know, and how, you know, how are you coping? I know you're homeschooling. I know you're trying to juggle the work. I see that you can't turn up to meetings after 3 o'clock. That's fine. That's no problem. You know, so, but all of those human moments, I guess, around, you know, creating this different type of connection between people, I think. And interestingly, one organization just got in touch right before this call, and they were like, we've had a plethora of people looking for 360. And I was like, what? Why are people looking for 360 right now? And they're like, they're thinking about their development and they want to know what it will take to, because of course everyone's insecure right now and they're thinking, you know, how valuable am I, and how can I develop myself more, and how can I add value more around here? And kind of their ask was, can I have a 360 done? And honestly, I was genuinely shocked, and I'm very HR at the best of time, but even I was going, wow, that's where people's heads are going to next, is, you know, that reassurance that you matter, you're valuable around here, we have a role for you, you know, and yes, we are interested in continuing to develop you. So I think all of those tools that we have available to us now are so valuable and more meaningful for employees than they ever have been, because they matter more now, because people have spent quite a long time now on lockdown, and they're coming back to uncertainty and ambiguity and what's happening to my organization, what's happening to me, what's happening to my role, and connecting them in new ways, I think, is our job from here, to help their resilience so that they can face the next phase of this.
Yeah, I think one of the things you kind of emphasize at the beginning, of course, is the impact it's going to have when you change things and bring in those changes. That a lot of the connection that occurs is a work-based connection, and it's connecting through the fabric of our work and making sure that that remains the case. And that, because obviously there's going to be other impacts that are maybe not so great after all of this. And what we talked about a little bit during the week was the fact that, you know, there may be redundancies, or there may be reorganizations happening, and that it's really important to be able to have structure and strategy behind all of these new tools that you were bringing in. So as we go through this, I'm kind of quite aware that you've experienced in this area from other places too. What kind of things do you think that are just top line that people need to be watching out for?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think over the course of when I was a HRD, we had some hard lessons learned around when you connect community in the wrong way, how that can backfire on you. And I remember in one particular organization I was a member of, we had you know, we lots of ways to connect people. We too many ways to connect people in many ways. It was a bit obsessive, and people were very connected to the organization because of it. But of course, like, they were all, you know, getting married and having kids together and all that kind of stuff. And as such, you know, any organizational shakes or challenges hit even harder, because when your whole life revolves around an organization, that can have, you know, an unhealthy benefit, you know, an unhealthy impact on people that they're not expecting. And I think what is important for us to remember is creating community needs to be through the work that we do, and it needs to be about, yes, helping reduce the isolation and helping people bond together through these challenging times, but it also means, you know, adding value into the work that they do naturally, not creating these artificial ways that they connect, you know, not creating, you know, just these random experiences for people to randomly connect with each other. You know, I think it has to be in the work they do, it has to be about resetting their goals in the right way, making sure that we're transparent about what kind of team goals we have, you know, checking in with each other, having our morning meetings together for sure, being clear about where the priorities are, appreciating each other and giving each other feedback and giving each other those moments of appreciation, but maybe not creating these artificial communities that can backfire over time. And I've been there with organizations when they've gone through really challenging times, and when the community was so tight, and that people just didn't know what to do when the organization went through the challenging times, because they were so locked into the mindset of, you know, this is my whole life is here, all my friends are here, and I know a lot of long-standing organizations have communities like that already in existence. So it makes it even more important that these people feel reassured when they, you know, throughout this change, and indeed when they get back to the workplace with real tools, real ways of connecting with each other, and real ways of knowing that they're valued and appreciated.
Well, I think, you know, this is a short discussion, obviously, but we've had a few questions come in. So maybe I'll just, I'll stop this share for a second, and we'll just see what kind of questions we have at the moment. And maybe we can answer a couple of them. And obviously, if there's any other questions afterwards, we can always follow up with those after. So Seth, what kind of questions do we have coming in that we can put to Aisling at the moment?
I think you're muted, Seth.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we're getting a lot of comments about that people are in the same kind of headspace. Everybody is trying to create that community. Is there any specific tips in regards to other companies' adoption of any kind of technologies that they're using right now?
Yeah. So definitely one way that people are trying to keep connection going is, well, obviously with our customers it's a bit easier. They're using Tandem to do an awful lot of this stuff. But even on a wider basis, what we're hearing a lot of is pulse surveys are going out regularly. So once every 2 weeks, kind of checking in on people, not to be an annoyance, but like very short, sharp interventions, like 4 to 5 questions on just how are you doing? And then bringing that down to the team level so they can see is there specific things as a team that needs to happen as opposed to just the bird's eye organizational view. So that's certainly one thing. Managing feedback in a much more structured way is definitely a thing, because as people gear up for interim reviews and people are kind of that little bit uncertain about where they stand, you know, putting some structure in about your feedback processes right now and giving managers recommended toolkit around that, I think is really, really valuable of, you know, what you should be giving feedback on. Should you be using the normal rating scales or not? Should you engage in the normal performance practice, or is it a more softer check-in approach? So that's a big trend that we're seeing right now as well. I think as well, there's an awful lot of goal reorientation happening with people reshaping their goals and making them much more short-termist by nature. So the long range goals that they might have set at the beginning of the year are a little bit displaced right now. So an awful lot of people are just kind of condensing their goals down into, okay, here's what we're going to focus on in the next few months. So much more agile approach to setting goals is really common right now. And then we're seeing one organization I thought a really good idea. It's a customer of ours where they put together kind of the e-learning toolkit for things that you might get curious about around this time. So things to help you develop, things to help you reflect and think about. And there was one organization and they ran some really interesting webinars on things like appreciation, feedback, various development, these kind of things, and they packaged it up and sent it to their employees as kind of almost like a moment of self-development for you while you're at home. So there's some really nice initiatives like that I think are easily adaptable by anybody.
Well, Aisling, I think we're running out of time, but I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today, because obviously it seems to be busier now that everyone's at home. Everything's a little bit busier, especially if you've got kids and stuff. So thanks to everyone who's attended today, and thank you, Aisling, for those insights that you've shared today. And obviously, we've got a bunch of events planned for the next few weeks. We're going to skip next week because it's Easter, but the following week on the 21st, we're beginning a series of live events that we're going to run. And really, they're just discussions that we're going to have around the different aspects of HR at the heart. And if you want to register for those events, you can come to the website. Seth might share the link in the chat pane, but otherwise we'll be emailing everyone with the links to register for that event. And we hope everyone can make it to that over the next few weeks as we kind of build out a community as we're going through these changes. Aisling, have you got anything to add before we finish up today?
No, maybe just to add that we're excited to have Kevin Empey as a guest speaker on our next one. So that is definitely something to look forward to. He's a real specialist knowledge in the areas of agility and resilience, which I think is the next big hurdle facing HR. So super looking forward to that one. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. And sorry we didn't get more time for your chat. We will make sure to manage our time better the next time.
That's right. So if anybody would like to join us for Kevin Empey on the 21st, please register at our website or through the link we'll send to you later. And thanks again for attending. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.